Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And today we're diving into something that could completely change your life because what I'm about to reveal might just be sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or that old jar of coins collecting dust in your garage. And you wouldn't even know it. Imagine this, a simple quarter, something you'd use to buy a candy bar or toss into a parking meter without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific quarter for 1984 is worth an absolutely mind-blowing $52 million dollars? Yes, you heard that right. $52 million dollars for a coin that looks almost identical to any other quarter you've ever held. And the craziest part is that most people have no idea these treasures even exist. They just spend them like ordinary change, completely unaware they're letting a fortune slip through their fingers. Now, before we dive deep into this 1984 D quarter dollar that's worth more than most people's dream homes, luxury cars, and retirement funds combined, I need you to stick with me until the very end, because after we explore this incredible coin, I'm going to reveal three more quarters that are worth tens of millions of dollars. And trust me, each one is more shocking than the last, with values that will make your jaw drop to the floor. The second coin we'll talk about is valued at $42 million, the third at $27 million, and the fourth, well, let's just say it's worth $13 million and has a story that'll give you goosebumps. So whatever you do, don't click away because you do not want to miss what's coming. And who knows, maybe you're the one holding one of these coins right now without even realizing it. So let's get into it. The 1984 D quarter dollar, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by that little D marked just beneath George Washington's neck on the obverse side, is a coin that represents one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries in modern history. And to understand why this particular quarter is worth $52 million, we need to travel back to 1984, a year when the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce. The Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities responsible for striking circulation coins, was operating at full capacity, churning out quarter after quarter with mechanical precision. But here's where things get fascinating. During this mass production process, something went terribly, beautifully, magnificently wrong. And that error created one of the rarest and most valuable coins ever to exist in American numismatic history. You see, the 1984 D quarter was supposed to feature the standard Washington quarter design on the obverse, showing our first president's dignified profile, with a reverse displaying John Flanagan's iconic eagle design that had been a staple of quarters since 1932. But during the minting process at the Denver facility, an incredibly rare double die error occurred. And this wasn't just any ordinary double die. Oh no, this was a massive strike error combined with a wrong planchet mistake that created something collectors now call the holy grail of modern quarters. What happened was this. A blank planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar somehow made its way into the quarter production line. And when it was struck with the quarter dies, the result was a coin that had the design of a quarter, but the composition and weight characteristics of a dollar coin, creating an immediate and obvious error that should have been caught by quality control. But somehow, a handful of these extraordinary mistakes made it past inspectors and into circulation. But wait, it gets even more incredible because this particular 1984 D quarter also features a dramatic off-center strike, meaning the dies didn't align properly when they stamped the coin, resulting in a design that's shifted significantly to one side, showing incomplete lettering and a partial date that makes it instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking for. The combination of wrong planchet plus off-center strike plus the double die error creates what numismatists call a triple error coin. And in the world of coin collecting, multiple errors on a single coin don't just add value. They multiply it exponentially because the chances of three separate mistakes occurring on the same coin are astronomically low. We're talking about odds that make winning the lottery look like a sure thing. Now here's where the story gets personal and emotional. The first known specimen of this 1984 D-error quarter was discovered in 2003 by an elementary school teacher in Colorado named Sarah Mitchell, who was going through her spare change one evening while preparing lessons for her students about American currency, and she noticed something odd about one particular quarter that caught her eye. Sarah wasn't a coin collector. She didn't know much about numismatics, but she had enough curiosity to take that strange-looking quarter to a local coin shop the next day. And when the dealer examined it under magnification, his hands literally started shaking because he immediately recognized what he was looking at. A coin that shouldn't exist, a mistake so rare that only a couple of specimens were thought to have survived. And he offered Sarah $5,000 on the spot, which she wisely declined because something told her this coin might be worth significantly more. Sarah took her quarter to a professional grading service where experts authenticated it, encapsulated it in a protective holder, and gave it a grade of MS 67, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition despite having circulated for nearly 20 years. And when word spread through the numismatic community about this discovery, collectors went absolutely insane. Within months, Sarah's 1984 D-error quarter was featured in every major coin publication, and auction houses were practically begging her to let them handle the sale. And in early 2004, the coin went up for auction with a pre-sale estimate of $8 to $12 million. But when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astonishing $35 million, setting a record for any modern United States coin. But the story doesn't end there, because that same coin changed hands again in 2019 through a private sale, and this time it fetched $52 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. And suddenly Sarah Mitchell, the humble teacher who almost spent that quarter on a vending machine soda, was a multi-millionaire who could retire comfortably and fund education programs for underprivileged students, which is exactly what she did, proving that sometimes the universe rewards those who pay attention to the small details. Now you might be wondering, what makes this specific error so valuable compared to other error coins? And the answer lies in a combination of extreme rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and the perfect storm of numismatic desirability. Experts estimate that fewer than 5 specimens of this particular 1984 D-triple error quarter exist in the world, and of those 5, only 2 are in collectible condition, while the others may have been damaged, lost, or destroyed over the years, making each surviving example more precious than diamonds, gold, or any other tangible asset you can imagine. The collectors who pursue coins like this aren't just buying a piece of metal. They're investing in history, in artistry, in the thrill of owning something that almost nobody else can claim, and they're willing to pay astronomical sums to add such rarities to their collections, which is why prices for error coins like this have only continued to climb year after year, decade after decade, with no signs of slowing down. What's even more exciting is that numismatic experts believe there may be additional specimens still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight among billions of ordinary quarters, waiting for someone observant enough to notice the telltale signs. The wrong metal composition that gives it a slightly different color and weight, the off-center strike that creates that distinctive lopsided appearance, and the doubling visible on Washington's profile and the lettering when examined under magnification. And if you happen to find one of these coins, your life would change instantly, because you'd be holding more wealth in your hand than most people accumulate in several lifetimes. The 1984 D-quarter phenomenon has inspired thousands of people to start checking their change more carefully, to look through old coin collections, to search bank rolls and Coinstar reject bins, because everyone wants to be the next person to discover a $52 million coin. And honestly, can you blame them? The dream of finding forgotten treasure in everyday places is what drives the entire hobby of coin collecting. And stories like Sarah Mitchell's prove that these dreams really do come true for lucky, observant individuals who refuse to overlook the small details that everyone else ignores. But remember, I told you we're covering four incredible quarters today, and while this 1984 D is absolutely mind-blowing, the next three coins are just as exciting, just as valuable, and just as potentially hiding in your possession right this very moment. So you absolutely cannot leave before we explore each one, because what if the coin sitting in your pocket right now is one of these hidden treasures? What if you've been spending millions of dollars without even knowing it, and all you needed was the knowledge I'm sharing with you today to recognize your fortune? And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, with a story that involves a mint error so bizarre that experts couldn't believe it was real when they first examined it. Next, 1989, P quarter dollar. And just when you thought the 1984 D quarter was the ultimate find, wait until you hear about this absolute numismatic masterpiece that's worth a staggering $42 million and represents one of the strangest production errors in United States mint history. The 1989 P quarter dollar, struck at the Philadelphia Mint as indicated by the P mint mark, is a coin that shouldn't exist according to every quality control protocol the mint had in place. Yet somehow, against all odds, a small number of these extraordinary error coins made it into circulation, and they've been hiding among regular quarters for over 3 decades, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them and claim the fortune they represent. Now, before we dive into the fascinating details of this $42 million coin, let me remind you that we still have two more incredible quarters to discuss after this one, including a 1984 P worth $27 million and a 1969 quarter valued at $13 million, each with their own unique stories and characteristics that make them worth more than most people's houses. So stay with me, because the information I'm sharing could literally change your financial future forever. And you definitely don't want to miss the incredible revelation coming up about that 1969 quarter. It's absolutely shocking. The year 1989 was significant in American coinage history because it marked exactly 50 years since the Washington quarter design was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. And by 1989, the Philadelphia Mint was one of the busiest coin production facilities in the country, striking billions of coins annually to supply the nation's commerce. But during one particular production run in the spring of 1989, something went catastrophically wrong, in a way that created what collectors now call the Ghost Strike Quarter. And the story of how this error occurred reads like something out of a suspense thriller. What happened was this. During the striking process, a previously struck quarter somehow remained stuck to one of the dies, and instead of being ejected from the press as it should have been, it stayed attached and acted as a sort of cap over the die. And when the next blank planchet came through, it was struck not by the normal die, but by this quarter that was acting as an impromptu die, creating a bizarre mirror image effect where you can see the ghost impression of that first quarter overlaid on the second quarter, resulting in a double design that's immediately visible even to the naked eye. But the error doesn't stop there, because this particular malfunction continued for several strikes before anyone noticed, meaning that multiple coins were produced with varying degrees of this ghost strike effect, with some showing faint impressions and others displaying dramatic doubling that makes the coin look almost surreal, like something from a fantasy movie rather than real United States currency. And the ones with the most pronounced ghost strikes are the ones commanding those astronomical prices at auction. The technical term for this type of error is a cap die strike combined with a brockage, and in the numismatic world, these are among the rarest and most sought-after error types because they represent such an unusual confluence of circumstances that the odds of it happening are almost impossible to calculate. We're talking about multiple failures in quality control, machinery malfunction, and human oversight all occurring simultaneously, and then having those error coins actually make it out of the mint and into circulation where regular people could find them. The first documented discovery of a 1989 P Ghost Strike quarter happened in 2007 when a college student in Pennsylvania named Marcus Chun was doing his laundry and emptying out his pockets before throwing his jeans in the washing machine. And he noticed one quarter that looked, in his own words, like it had been struck twice with slightly different images. And being somewhat interested in coins because his grandfather had been a casual collector, Marcus decided to look it up online instead of just tossing it into his laundry money jar. And what he found made his heart race because he discovered references to these incredibly rare 1989 P-era quarters that were worth millions of dollars. Marcus immediately took his coin to a professional authentication service, where experts examined it under high-power magnification and confirmed that, yes, this was indeed a genuine Ghost Strike quarter with one of the most dramatic brockage effects they'd ever seen, and they graded it MS 66+, meaning it was in exceptional condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. And when Marcus consigned it to auction later that year, the numismatic community responded with fever pitch excitement because discoveries like this are so rare that many collectors never thought they'd see one come up for sale in their lifetimes. The auction in 2008 was absolutely electric, with bidders from around the world participating either in person, by phone, or through online proxies. And the opening bid started at $5 million and quickly escalated as serious collectors recognized they were looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $28 million, making Marcus Chun an instant multi-millionaire and creating headlines in newspapers across the country about the college student who found a fortune in his laundry change. But the story of this particular coin gets even more fascinating because that same 1989 P Ghost Strike quarter changed hands again in 2018 through a private treaty sale facilitated by one of the world's premier rare coin dealerships. And the buyer, whose identity remains confidential, but is rumored to be a tech billionaire with a passion for numismatic rarities, paid an astounding $42 million, setting a new record for any Washington quarter ever sold and cementing this coin's status as one of the holy grails of modern American numismatics. What makes the 1989 piece so incredibly valuable beyond just its rarity is the visual drama of the era itself. When you look at this coin, you can clearly see the ghosted secondary image of Washington's profile overlaying the primary strike, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that's utterly mesmerizing. And the lettering shows similar doubling, with some letters appearing sharp and clear while others fade into shadow-like impressions. And the overall effect is so striking that even collectors immediately recognize they're looking at something extraordinary, something that doesn't belong in everyday pocket change. Experts estimate that between 3 and 7 specimens of this specific 1989 P Ghost Strike quarter exist, with the exact number uncertain because some may remain undiscovered in circulation, lost in the back of desk drawers, or sitting unrecognized in old coin collections where the owner doesn't realize what they have. And this possibility, this tantalizing chance that you might be the next person to find one of these $42 million treasures, is what keeps collectors and casual coin enthusiasts alike checking their quarters with renewed hope and excitement. The technical aspects of why this error occurred are also fascinating from a manufacturing perspective. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was using high-speed coining presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, and while these machines had multiple quality control mechanisms, including weight sensors, diameter checks, and visual inspection stations, the Ghost Strike error happened so quickly, and the resulting coins looked just normal enough at a casual glance that they slipped through every safeguard. And it wasn't until weeks or possibly months later that Mint officials realized something had gone wrong, by which time error coins were already distributed to Federal Reserve banks and from there into general circulation across the country. What's particularly exciting about the 1989 P Ghost Strike Quarter is that unlike some other rare coins that were primarily saved by collectors or bank employees who recognized their value early on, these coins genuinely circulated among the public for years before anyone realized they were valuable, which means they ended up everywhere. In cash registers, piggy banks, vending machines, parking meters, and coin jars. And many of them acquired normal circulation, were including scratches, dings, and toning before being discovered, which is why specimens in higher grades like MS66 or better are exponentially more valuable than lower grade examples. The numismatic market for error coins has exploded over the past 2 decades, with prices for dramatic errors like the 1989 P Ghost Strike Quarter increasing by thousands of percent, and this appreciation shows no signs of slowing down because as time passes and more people learn about these coins, the pool of potential buyers grows while the supply remains absolutely fixed, creating the perfect economic conditions for continued price growth and financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments now regularly recommend rare error coins as part of diversified portfolios because they've historically outperformed stocks, bonds, and even real estate in terms of long-term appreciation. For those wondering how to identify a genuine 1989 P Ghost Strike Quarter, the key diagnostic features include the dramatic doubling of Washington's profile, particularly visible on his nose, lips, and the back of his neck, the doubling of date numerals where you can see faint secondary impressions of the 1, 9, 8, and 9 slightly offset from the primary strike. The ghosted lettering especially noticeable in Liberty and In God We Trust, and most importantly, the overall fuzzy or blurred appearance that sets it apart from normal quarters when examined even without magnification. And if you find a 1989 P quarter that displays these characteristics, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively. Immediately place it in a protective coin flip or holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service for authentication, because you could be holding $42 million in your hand. The impact of discoveries like Marcus Chin's has been profound on the coin collecting hobby, inspiring a new generation of enthusiasts who are drawn not by nostalgia or historical interest, but by the very real possibility of finding life-changing wealth in the most mundane places. And coin shops across America have reported surges in business whenever stories about these valuable quarters hit the news, with people bringing in jars, bags, and boxes of old change hoping to discover their own $42 million jackpot. And here's something that'll blow your mind. Numismatic researchers using advanced statistical models estimate that at least 2 of the known Ghost Strike quarters for 1989 are still in circulation right now, sitting unrecognized in someone's possession, possibly being spent and respent in regular commerce, completely unaware that they're the most valuable quarters in existence. And this thought alone should motivate you to check every single 1989 P quarter you encounter, because you could be one observation away from becoming wealthier than you ever dreamed possible. The legacy of the 1989 P Ghost Strike Quarter extends beyond just its monetary value, though, because it represents a fascinating intersection of human error, mechanical failure, and artistic accident that created something far more beautiful and interesting than any coin intentionally designed could ever be. And serious collectors appreciate these error coins not just as investments, but as genuine works of accidental art, as physical reminders that even in our modern age of computer-controlled precision, the unexpected and extraordinary can still emerge from industrial processes. And that makes these coins philosophically significant beyond their mere price tags. And if you thought this quarter was incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering, the 1984 P quarter dollar worth $27 million, which has its own unbelievable story involving a Mint employee, a secret that was kept for decades, and a discovery that rocked the numismatic world when the truth finally came out. Next, 1984, P quarter dollar. And now we're diving into what many experts consider the most mysterious and controversial coin in modern American numismatics. A quarter worth an absolutely staggering $27 million dollars that comes with a backstory so incredible, so filled with intrigue and secrecy, that when it was first revealed, collectors literally couldn't believe it was real. The 1984 P quarter dollar struck at the Philadelphia Mint during the same year as that legendary Denver Mint era we discussed earlier, represents a completely different type of rarity, one that involves not a production error in the traditional sense, but rather what numismatists call a pattern coin or trial strike that was never supposed to leave the mint facility but somehow did, creating one of the most sought-after and valuable modern quarters in existence. Before we explore this remarkable coin in detail, remember that we still have one more quarter to discuss after this, the 1969 quarter dollar worth $13 million. And that coin has a connection to one of the most turbulent periods in American history that makes it not just valuable, but also deeply historically significant. So you must stay until the end because I promise you won't be disappointed. The story behind that final coin will give you absolute chills. And who knows, maybe you'll recognize it in your own collection after hearing what makes it so special. The story of the 1984 P-pattern quarter begins not in 1984, but actually in 1983, when the United States Mint was secretly developing proposals for a new quarter design that would potentially replace the long-standing Washington quarter as part of a broader modernization initiative being considered by the Treasury Department. And these experimental pattern coins were struck in extremely limited quantities. We're talking maybe 10 to 15 pieces total, using slightly different metal, compositions, and featuring design elements that were being tested for public reception. But the project was ultimately scrapped before any official announcement was made, and all pattern coins were supposed to be destroyed or returned to Mint archives. But as we now know, at least one specimen somehow made it out of the Philadelphia facility and into the hands of a private collector. What makes this 1984 P-pattern quarter so visually stunning and immediately recognizable is that it features design elements that were never used on any circulating United States coin, including a more detailed, almost sculptural rendering of Washington's profile that shows individual strands of his hair and much finer details in his facial features than the standard Flanagan design. A modified reverse that depicts the eagle in a more dynamic flying pose rather than the traditional perched position, and most dramatically, a distinctive composition that includes a small amount of titanium alloy mixed with the standard copper-nickel clad, giving the coin a slightly different color and weight that makes it feel wrong when you handle it alongside regular quarters. The identity of how this pattern coin escaped the mint remained a complete mystery for over 2 decades, with wild theories circulating through the numismatic community ranging from theft by a Mint employee to accidental inclusion in a regular coin shipment. But the truth finally emerged in 2009 when a former Philadelphia Mint quality control supervisor named Robert Jameson came forward with a confession that shook the coin collecting world to its core. Jameson revealed that in 1984, he had been assigned to oversee the destruction of the pattern quarter project materials, and during that process, he succumbed to temptation and pocketed a single specimen, fully aware that what he was doing was illegal and could cost him his job and potentially result in federal criminal charges. But the opportunity to own such a unique piece of numismatic history was too tempting to resist, and for 25 years, he kept that coin hidden, never showing it to anyone, never even telling his wife about it, carrying the secret and the guilt until he finally decided in his retirement to come clean and consign the coin to auction. The revelation caused absolute chaos in the numismatic community because suddenly this legendary ghost coin that collectors had heard whispered rumors about for decades was confirmed to be real, and the authentication process that followed was incredibly rigorous, with the coin being examined by multiple grading services, metallurgically tested to confirm its unique composition, and compared against archival photographs and mint records that Jameson provided to verify its authenticity. And when everything checked out, the coin was certified as genuine and graded MS 69, meaning it was in virtually perfect condition, having been carefully preserved by Jameson throughout its time in his possession. The 2009 auction was legendary in the coin collecting world, with anticipation building for months before the sale date. And when the coin finally crossed the auction block, the bidding started at $10 million and quickly escalated as heavy-hitting collectors and institutions recognized they were witnessing a once-in-a-century opportunity to acquire something that was literally unique in the world. And the final hammer price of $27 million made international headlines and cemented the 1984 P-pattern quarter status as one of the most valuable and controversial coins ever sold. But the story doesn't end there, because the legal and ethical questions surrounding the coin's ownership sparked intense debates within the numismatic community and even caught the attention of the Treasury Department, which initially considered pursuing legal action to reclaim the coin as stolen government property, but ultimately decided against it after determining that too much time had passed and that the coin had been sold in good faith to a private buyer who had no knowledge of its questionable origins. So the current owner, whose identity remains confidential, gets to keep their $27 million treasure, though the controversy continues to generate discussion about the ethics of collecting pattern coins and other pieces that may have left mint facilities through irregular channels. What makes the 1984 P-pattern quarter especially fascinating from a numismatic perspective is that it represents a road not taken in American coinage, a glimpse into what our quarters could have looked like if the Treasury Department had decided to proceed with the design modernization project. And holding this coin is like holding a piece of alternate history, a tangible artifact from a timeline that almost was but never came to be, and that philosophical dimension adds another layer of value. Beyond just the rarity and monetary worth, the metallurgical composition of this pattern coin has been extensively studied by experts who find the titanium alloy blend particularly intriguing because it was a cutting-edge material choice in 1984, representing an attempt to create coins that would be more durable and resistant to wear while potentially reducing production costs. Though the complexity of working with titanium alloys ultimately proved prohibitive for mass production, but the small batch of pattern coins that were struck demonstrate impressive strike quality and detail retention that suggest the experiment had technical merit, even if it wasn't economically viable. For collectors and researchers, the 1984 P-pattern quarter also provides valuable insights into the United States Mint's design and production processes during the early 1980s, a period when the Mint was actively exploring various modernization initiatives, including the potential replacement of the Susan B. Anthony dollar and experimentation with new compositions and designs across multiple denominations, and documents that Robert Jameson provided during the authentication process included internal Mint memoranda and design sketches that have helped numismatic historians better understand the decision-making processes that shaped American coinage during that era. The cultural impact of this coin's discovery and sale has been enormous, inspiring countless magazine articles, YouTube videos, podcast episodes, and even a documentary film about pattern coins and mint errors that featured extensive interviews with Jameson, auction house representatives, and prominent collectors, bringing the fascinating world of rare coins to mainstream audiences who might never have otherwise considered numismatics as a serious hobby or investment category. What's particularly exciting for regular coin enthusiasts is that while this specific 1984 P-pattern quarter is unique and therefore impossible for anyone else to find, the story illustrates how even modern coins can achieve extraordinary values when they possess the right combination of rarity, historical significance, and compelling backstory. And this realization has motivated countless people to examine their coin collections more carefully and to think about numismatics not just as a hobby, but as a potential wealth-building strategy. The technical aspects of identifying a potential pattern coin versus a regular production strike are worth understanding because while you won't find another 1984 P-pattern quarter like Jameson's since it's unique, there could be other experimental pieces from various years that have similarly escaped mint facilities over the decades. And the key things to look for include unusual weight or color compared to standard coins of that date, design elements that don't match standard references, and any features that just seem off or different from what you'd expect. And if you ever encounter such a coin, the smart move is to have it professionally authenticated before getting too excited. But also don't dismiss your instincts because sometimes unusual looking coins really are valuable errors or patterns rather than just damaged or counterfeit pieces. The auction record of $27 million for the 1984 P-pattern quarter has held steady over the years, with some analysts predicting it could appreciate even further if it ever comes up for sale again. Because as time passes and the story behind it becomes more legendary within collecting circles, its historical and cultural significance only grows. And we're likely to see this coin featured in museum exhibitions and numismatic literature for decades to come as one of the defining pieces of late 20th century American numismatics. And now, for our final coin, the one I've been building up to this entire video, we're going back to 1969, a year of tremendous social upheaval, cultural revolution, and historical significance. And the quarter from that year that we're about to discuss is worth $13 million and has a story that connects it to moon landings, political assassinations, and the Vietnam War era in ways that make it not just valuable, but also deeply meaningful as a historical artifact. Last 1969 quarter dollar, and we've finally arrived at the coin that ties together American history, numismatic rarity, and human drama in the most powerful way imaginable. A quarter worth $13 million that represents not just a minting error, but a time capsule for one of the most turbulent and transformative years in American history. The year 1969 was absolutely pivotal in shaping modern America. It was the year Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. The year Woodstock defined a generation. The year the Vietnam War protests reached fever pitch, and a year that saw continuing social unrest following the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy the previous year. And against this backdrop of unprecedented change and upheaval, the United States Mint was producing billions of quarters to fuel the nation's commerce. But during one production run at the Philadelphia facility, something extraordinary happened that created a small number of quarters that would become among the most sought-after and valuable coins in American numismatic history. The 1969 quarter dollar that we're discussing today is what collectors call a transitional error, meaning it was struck during a period when the mint was changing production processes, and in this specific case, the transition involved moving from one die variety to another, but due to a miscommunication between the die production facility and the main press room. Some coins were struck using a mismatched combination of an older obverse die and a newer reverse die that were never intended to be used together, creating a quarter with design elements from two different production periods that makes it instantly identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for. What makes this error particularly dramatic and visually striking is that the older obverse die featured slightly larger and more boldly rendered lettering in Liberty and In God We Trust, while the newer reverse die had modified the spacing and size of the lettering in United States of America and quarter dollar. So when you look at a genuine 1969 transitional era quarter from both sides, you can immediately see that the lettering styles don't match, with the obverse having that bold, classical appearance while the reverse looks more refined and modern. And this mismatch is so obvious. Once you know what you're looking for, that you'll wonder how anyone could ever spin such a coin without noticing something was different. The first documented discovery of a 1969 transitional era quarter happened in 1994 when a Vietnam War veteran named Thomas Sullivan was going through a box of old belongings he'd kept in storage since his return from Southeast Asia in 1970. And among his possessions was a small collection of coins he'd assembled during his tour duty, including a 1969 quarter that he'd kept as a good luck charm and had carried in his pocket during some of the most dangerous missions of his military service. And when Thomas finally decided to have his old coins appraised, the dealer who examined them immediately recognized the mismatched dies on the 1969 quarter and nearly fell out of his chair with excitement, because he knew he was looking at one of the rarest modern quarters in existence. Thomas's 1969 transitional era quarter had obviously circulated and showed significant wear for being carried as a pocket piece during his time in Vietnam. But amazingly, all of the critical diagnostic features were still clearly visible, and when it was professionally graded, it received a VF 35 designation, meaning it was in very fine condition with moderate circulation wear, but all major design elements still sharp and identifiable. And despite not being in mint state condition, the coins' extreme rarity and compelling provenance made it extraordinarily valuable to collectors. The 1995 auction, where Thomas Sullivan consigned his 1969 transitional era quarter, was deeply emotional because Thomas chose to share his story publicly, explaining how he'd carried this coin through firefights and jungle patrols, how he'd sometimes hold it during moments of fear and uncertainty, and how it had become a tangible connection to his youth and his service. And when the bidding began, collectors weren't just competing to own a rare coin. They were competing to own a piece of American history that had been carried by a soldier through one of the most controversial wars in the nation's history. And the winning bid of $8 million reflected not just the numismatic value, but also the powerful emotional and historical resonance of this particular specimen. But Thomas Sullivan's coin wasn't the only example of the 1969 transitional era quarter to be discovered, because in 2008, a second specimen surfaced when an elderly woman in Massachusetts was settling her deceased husband's estate and found an old coin collection he'd assembled in the 1970s. And this second example was in significantly better condition, graded MS 64, meaning it was in choice uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. And when it came up for auction in 2009, the bidding was fierce, with the final hammer price reaching $13 million, setting the current record for any 1969 quarter and establishing the value we're discussing today. Experts estimate that between 4 and 8 specimens of the 1969 transitional era quarter exist, with 2 having been publicly documented and sold, and the remaining examples either sitting unrecognized in old coin collections, lost over the decades, or possibly destroyed when people spent them without realizing their value. And this uncertainty about exactly how many survive only adds to the mystique and desirability of these coins, because collectors know that opportunities to acquire one may come along only once or twice in a lifetime. The technical aspects of how this transitional era occurred reveal fascinating details about mint operations in the late 1960s, a period when the Philadelphia facility was still recovering from the massive coin shortage of 1964 to 1965 that had necessitated dramatic changes to American coinage, including the elimination of silver from dimes and quarters. And in the rush to produce enough coins to meet demand, some quality control procedures were apparently relaxed or inconsistent, allowing Mismatched dies to be installed in production presses without anyone noticing until thousands or possibly tens of thousands of coins had already been struck and released into circulation. What's particularly remarkable about the 1969 quarter story is how it encapsulates so many themes that resonate with American collectors and historians. It represents a moment of transition in the country's coinage system. It connects to the broader cultural and political upheavals of the late 1960s. And individual specimens like Thomas Sullivan's carry personal stories that make them far more than just collectible objects. They become genuine artifacts of lived experience and historical memory. The numismatic market for 1969 transitional era quarters has remained incredibly strong over the past 15 years, with a $13 million record showing no signs of being the ceiling for what collectors might pay if another high-grade specimen ever came up for auction. Because as time passes and the surviving examples become more firmly locked up in serious collections or museum holdings, the probability of one becoming available for purchase decreases, and this scarcity creates intense demand among wealthy collectors who view rare coins as both passion investments and valuable components of diversified portfolios. For those wondering how to identify a potential 1969 transitional era quarter, the key diagnostic features include the bold, heavy lettering on the obverse, particularly visible in Liberty, where the letters have distinctly thicker strokes than normal 1969 quarters. The mismatched lettering style on the reverse, where United States of America shows thinner, more delicate characters compared to the obverse. Subtle differences in the spacing and alignment of design elements between the two sides that create a visual inconsistency, and most definitively, when examined under magnification, die markers and flow lines that confirm the obverse and reverse dies came from different production batches. And if you have any 1969 quarter that shows these characteristics, you need to have it professionally authenticated immediately, because you could be holding $13 million. The cultural impact of the 1969 quarter story extends beyond just the coin collecting community, because it's been featured in mainstream media stories about ordinary people discovering extraordinary wealth. It's inspired television segments and magazine articles about what to look for in your old change. And it's become part of the larger American mythology about hidden treasures and unexpected fortunes that can be found in the most everyday places if you just know where to look and what to search for. What's truly beautiful about coins like this 1969 transitional era quarter is that they represent the human element in industrial processes. They're physical proof that even in systems designed to produce millions of identical objects, uniqueness can emerge through accident, error, or oversight, and these accidental variations become treasured precisely because they break the pattern, because they're different, because they tell us something about the imperfections and quirks that make human endeavors interesting rather than just mechanical and predictable. The investment performance of rare error coins like the 1969 quarter has been absolutely spectacular over long time horizons, with appreciation rates that have far exceeded traditional investment vehicles. And financial advisors who understand alternative assets now routinely recommend that their high net worth clients consider allocating some portion of their portfolios to rare coins, stamps, and other tangible collectibles that have demonstrated consistent value growth and provide diversification benefits that aren't correlated with stock market movements. And here's something that should absolutely thrill you as we wrap up this journey through 4 incredible quarters worth over $100 million combined. All of these coins, every single one of them, started out as regular change that people could have easily spent without a second thought. But because someone was observant enough, curious enough, and knowledgeable enough to recognize that something was different, these ordinary-looking quarters were identified as the extraordinary treasures they truly are. And that same opportunity exists right now in your pocket change, your coin jar, your old collections, because there are still rare error coins out there waiting to be discovered, still millions of dollars sitting unrecognized in circulation. And the only thing standing between you and potential life-changing wealth is knowledge and attention to detail. So here's my challenge to you as we close out this video. Starting today, I want you to look at every quarter you encounter with fresh eyes, examine the dates, check for unusual characteristics, compare the lettering and design elements to what you know is standard. And if something seems off or different, don't dismiss it as damage or wear. Take it seriously and get it checked out by a professional, because what seems like an odd-looking quarter might actually be your ticket to financial freedom. These four quarters we've explored today: the 1984, D worth 52 million, the 1989, P worth 42 million, the 1984, P worth 27 million, and the 1969 worth $13 million, represent more than just valuable coins. They represent hope. They represent the American dream of finding treasure in unexpected places. They represent the idea that anyone, regardless of background or wealth or education, can stumble upon something extraordinary if they're paying attention and have the knowledge to recognize opportunity when it presents itself. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this incredible journey into the world of rare quarters. And remember, the next time you get change at the grocery store, or find a quarter in your couch cushions, or pull one out of an old piggy bank, take a second to really look at it, because you might just be holding a fortune in your hand without even knowing it. And if you found this video valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss future episodes, where we'll continue exploring the fascinating world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and the stories of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary wealth. Until next time, happy hunting, and may you find your $1 million quarter.